All right, so I have to give a disclaimer, Carl. I was bad. I didn't want to deal with Spectrum emulator nonsense. So I did find a Flash version of the game. I did, and at the end, I did compare it to videos of the actual game. It plays just the same. There's obviously no color clash because this is a Flash version. I do realize that he would be turning red, green, and all the colors of the rainbow uh, if I were playing on an actual Spectrum emulator.
Yes, and which is basically part of the fun of playing a Specky game. And I'm seeing, okay, we have to talk a little bit about the gameplay here.
Yes.
You are clearly dying again and again.
I am. I am learning my way slowly. Uh
Mhm.
Certainly, figured out that the yeah, so one of the things that was a real pain to figure out is the whole death from above thing, which is very annoying. If you clip, I figured out that the bushes were harmful, and then, figured out, oh, even though, in a more traditionally put together platformer, there'd be collision detection with the ceiling and stuff above me on the next level wouldn't affect me. Clearly, I am being killed by that plant above me.
Yeah. Yes,
It's
yes, you
like,
are. Well, just like you were killed by the monster above you
yes,
before
yes.
that. So you should have learned your lesson the first time.
It's all an exciting new world of horrors.
Yeah. But it is interesting. I mean, this is coming out at the same time as Mario Brothers, and it's obviously inspired by Miner 2049er. Have you played Miner 2049er?
I have not. I am
Oh,
also familiar with it, as I was familiar with Manic Miner in terms of, yeah. But no, I've never actually played it. You know,
oh,
just
yeah.
slightly too young for that era of platformers.
Yeah, I mean it's part of a larger, obviously Donkey Kong inspired in many ways series of games. We also have
Yep,
Jumpman on the Atari 8-bit has also
yep.
come out at this point. And it's this idea, okay, single screen, you side scrolling, jumping is the main mechanic. It's interesting in that regard. But yeah, this game clearly has a very weird, nonsensical, almost Monty Python-esque sensibility about it.
Yes. Um, and of course, we won't get to see this in my 7 minutes of floundering, but a
Oh,
game known for its incredible variety in the levels in terms of different types of objects and enemies, all with that very surrealistic Monty Python-esque bent, as you said.
yeah. Well, and the variety is something that already showed up in Jumpman and Manic Miner.
Hmm.
I mean, Miner 2049er.
Right.
But yeah, this one just takes it to a whole new level. The sequels also just pile on top of that. Once you get
Hmm.
into Jet Set Willie, for example,
Right.
it really just goes quite
And
crazy.
yes, and starts birthing the kind of unique British arcade adventure genre. The collectathons. I mean, this is a collectathon in the sense that you have to get the keys in every level, but it's not really a collectathon in the sense of a Jet Set Willy or a Dizzy, where you're going over a large interconnected world and collecting various different objects.
Exactly, exactly. I
So
mean,
yeah.
I
Oh, go ahead.
always think the Metroidvania is really just this genre. In many ways. I mean, the first time I really understood what to do in Metroid, I was like, okay, I've done this 100 times already on my C64. What's new? I played
Yeah.
Andy Cap on the C64. It was that gameplay.
Yeah, there is a lot of overlap there to be sure. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of mastered the bottom and the middle of the screen now. The top of the screen is very nasty. So Manic Miner has a very interesting parabolic
Oh,
jump. Has a very
sorry.
interesting you're fine. Has a very interesting parabolic jump arc. And Matthew Smith uses it to very good effect, having to not just time your jumps, but also timing where you're going to be in your jump. So that one key that's directly underneath a stalactite, that one is fairly tricky because you have to time it so that you're on the down arc of your jump
Yeah.
before you grab it, which I think is very clever. And yeah, now we've made it to the end, but then of course we have to make it all the way back. And one thing that I was having trouble with, it felt like the collision detection between Minor Willie and the plants was a bit naff, as they might say, on the other side of the pond from me.
A bit unforgiving.
Yes. I'm sure it's probably pixel perfect. If I were to slow mo it, you'd see where my pixel touched, but that's where I had the most problem in this level. I mean, the rest of it was pretty easy to figure out. It took me a little bit to get the parabolic arc on the stalactite, but and obviously, I never completely cured my dying, but most of it made sense after a couple of times through. But the plants, it felt like I was hitting the plants when I still shouldn't have been close enough to hit them. And I did find that a bit frustrating.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I believe it's probably not a pixel perfect in the sense of you're actually touching the twig. It's pixel perfect that the block around them is what you're activating.
That would make sense because, the spectrum does operate on blocks of things, which is in part why you get so much color clash in a real spectrum. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's what's happening. And so that's what ultimately prevented me from completing this level. I know I was so close there.
Yeah, so close.
And the rest of it would have been, pretty straightforward. But it's that collision detection that was really throwing me off on those plants at the top of the screen.
I hear you.
Go ahead.
No. I was just going to say it really is a pain in the frickin' ass, this game.
Yeah, and Matthew Smith, he did a level-by-level commentary on the game for Retro Gamer, and I'd read it a long time ago. I did not read it again until after completing this playthrough, so that I wouldn't get too spoiled in advance.
Playthrough is a very, very it's more like an attempt to play the game.
Well, yes, but I will note that in that level-by-level guide, he did say that he deliberately put variations on some of the most tricky jumps in the entire game in the first level. It was not designed to have a smooth ramp up.
Yeah, I mean, it's you kind of wonder why he would do that, but then again, this is very, very early days for the British industry and extremely early days for the Spectrum. So it's, there are no rules yet. If I remember correctly, and this was one of the reasons why I was hoping you'd actually do it on an actual Speccy, the keyboard layout, and this was very common for Spectrum games, was Q and A and O and P as the arrow keys.
Now you see, even if I had played it on a Spectrum emulator, I would have adjusted the controls to.
You would have had to adjust them in the emulator.
That's what I mean.
In the game, not
that's
an
what I'm
option.
talking about. That's what I'm talking about. I would have adjusted them in the emulator, even if I had played it on a Spectrum emulator. So you wouldn't have gotten that nonsense out.
Or you would have had to. It would have had to get it working with one of the joystick options.
Yeah,
and it's been way too many years since I've loaded it up on a Spectrum emulator to know whether or not it had a Kempston joystick or just the Sinclair joystick options. But, okay, so good, bad experience? What do you...
Well, I mean, it was a somewhat frustrating experience. I mean, that shouldn't be too hard to understand. And I do think part of that frustration was unfairness. Only part of it. I mean, I would never claim to be the world's greatest player of action games. So, some of the places I was dying was me. I mean, I think the wind-up enemy moving back and forth on the conveyor belt, I think that one's very fair. I just didn't always get the timing right. I do think the collision detection, and I think the stalactite puzzle is also very fair. I think it's nice the way that he takes advantage of the parabolic jump that way. I would say the interaction with the bushes was not entirely me, and that there was some unfairness there, probably down to the limitations of the hardware. That said, I can see why this game was incredibly well regarded when it came out on the Spectrum. It is streets ahead, to use another term from over there, of a lot of early British computer games. And it is well done, even though the real Spectrum version, has color clash, which is unavoidable. He does a really good job of making sure there aren't too many colors clashing all at once, and he makes a good job of making sure that the game keeps moving and isn't subject to any terrible slowdown. At least in the first level. I didn't watch a complete playthrough. I just watched a first level playthrough after the fact to see what it would look like on a real Spectrum. So yeah, I mean, even though it was frustrating, I mean, it's a game that invites you to come back and keep trying rather than just getting completely frustrated and quitting in a rage. So, it's not entirely a bad thing back in the day of limited game sizes, limited overall play time, to have something that takes a little bit of time for you to master that you can't just breeze through.
Very good. Okay, well, let's head over to the audio episode and keep doing this. Ha